Wherever you are right now, I hope you're settled into a quiet, gentle space. Maybe you're lying back, feeling the steady rise and fall of your breath, or maybe you're sitting somewhere soft as the world outside slowly fades away. Tonight, we're going to drift into something vast, something older than mountains, wider than continents, and deeper than the very idea of knowledge itself. Tonight, we explore how the ocean thinks without a mind. Let your thoughts loosen and float a little, the way a small piece of driftwood might follow the lazy sway of the tide. There is no rush, no end goal, just the slow unfolding of an idea as timeless as water. Because the ocean, this enormous planetary body, does something extraordinary. It behaves as if it knows. It adapts. It anticipates. It regulates. It shapes life and is shaped by life. And yet, unlike you or me, it has no neurons, no brain, no electrical pulses firing to map memory or prediction. It operates through something else, a kind of distributed, emergent intelligence made of currents and chemistry, pressure and temperature, ecosystems and migrations, each gently pushing and pulling on the others. So tonight, we will walk slowly into that mystery. We'll follow the soft pull of tides, the whisper of deep-sea vents, the slow dance of plankton clouds. And we'll ask, very gently, in what sense does the ocean think? Not to answer quickly, but to drift with a question. Imagine standing at the edge of a shoreline. Perhaps it's early morning. The sky is pale, and the first hints of sunlight are stretching themselves across the surface of the water. You watch the waves slide forward, retreat, and rise again, each one slightly different, and yet all part of the same ancient rhythm. While you stand there, the ocean is doing 1,000 things at once. It is redistributing heat across the entire planet, using vast conveyor belts of water that stretch from the warm equator all the way to the icy poles. It is carrying nutrients from the dark depths up to the surface, sustaining invisible forests of microscopic plants. It is responding to storms, to pressure changes, to the pull of the moon itself. It's easy, in this moment, to imagine a kind of awareness. Not like yours, not personal or conscious, but something emergent, like the awareness of a forest or the awareness of a hive. Not one mind, but many small processes interacting, guiding each other. The ocean doesn't think in thoughts. It thinks in flows. It thinks in the language of temperature gradients, where warm and cold water push against each other to create storms or calm seas. It thinks in salinity, where the saltiness of water influences density, which in turn shapes currents that travel thousands of miles. It thinks in cycles of nutrients, moving nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus the way a brain circulates neurotransmitters. It thinks through creatures, millions upon millions of organisms, each reacting to tiny changes in light, in pressure, in chemistry, sending signals through behavior that ripple outward. This is not metaphor alone. Scientists refer to many such processes as feedback loops, self-organizing systems, or complex adaptive networks. These are the same terms used in cognitive science, ecology, and the study of collective intelligence. In a way, the ocean is like an enormous brain made not of cells, but of currents. Not of chemical synapses, but of chemical balances. Not of memory in the traditional sense, but of patterns preserved across millennia. And so, as you breathe gently and settle deeper into this slow, drifting exploration, imagine the entire ocean as a living system, not alive as an organism, but alive as a process, one that has been unfolding for billions of years, shaping the planet in ways no single creature could understand. To understand how the ocean can think, we first have to understand how thought itself is often a product of complex interaction. In your own mind, a thought is not born from a single neuron. It emerges from countless interactions, electrical impulses passing through networks, feedback loops adjusting and rebalancing, small signals clustering together into something meaningful. And this is precisely what we see in nature, on scales much larger than a brain. A murmuration of starlings swirls across the sky, moving as though guided by a single mind, though no leader directs them. A colony of ants adjusts its behavior depending on food, danger, or environmental changes, without any ant knowing the full picture. A coral reef responds to warming waters by shifting species, adjusting feeding habits, and reorganizing its structure. These are systems that behave intelligently without possessing a central mind. So when we drift this idea into the ocean, something becomes clear. Intelligence is not limited to creatures with brains. Sometimes it emerges from systems of interaction. And the ocean is the largest such system on Earth. Let's drift deeper now, away from the shore, where the waves are soft and rhythmic, into the open sea, where the water becomes darker, colder, and far more mysterious. Here, beneath the surface, billions of tiny organisms move in synchronized migrations, rising at night and sinking by day. This daily vertical migration, the largest animal movement on Earth, happens without centralized direction. Tiny cues in light, temperature, and pressure guide whole communities to rise together. And because they rise, predators rise. And because predators rise, their predators rise. A massive, coordinated ascent, as if the sea itself is breathing. The ocean thinks here, not in words, but in patterns. Not in moments, but in cycles. Not in consciousness, but in behavioral symmetry. These migrations cool the surface, move nutrients, influence weather, and even affect the carbon balance of the entire planet. And all of it, every shimmering vertical wave of motion, is guided by creatures smaller than grains of sand, each responding to a tiny change in its environment. The ocean doesn't need a brain. It has life as its neurons. Life that responds, adapts, organizes, and amplifies signals across scale. As we go deeper still, into the nearly lightless regions where pressure rises like invisible stone, we encounter another kind of intelligence, not in creatures, but in chemistry. Here, hydrothermal vents crack the ocean floor open, releasing mineral-rich water into the dark. Around these vents, life flourishes in intricate communities. These organisms form metabolic networks that function much like information processing systems. They detect chemical changes, shift their behaviors, and modify their ecosystems. The microbes around these vents respond instantly to new mineral outputs, adjusting their internal chemistry in ways that ripple outward to the entire vent community. And again, no brain. No central control. Just feedback, response, adaptation. Exactly the same principles that underlie intelligence in biological and artificial systems. If you've ever watched a tide pool for more than a few minutes, you know how dynamic the ocean is. Every movement, no matter how small, a snail grazing on algae, a crab scuttling under a stone, a tiny anemone opening its tentacles, changes everything else around it. The ocean senses these changes. Not consciously, not deliberately, but through the interaction of billions of small processes. If the temperature shifts, entire currents adjust. If one species of plankton grows too rapidly, chemical balances change. If too much fresh water enters from melting ice, salinity shifts, creating new patterns of circulation. It is a form of cognition, written not in neurons, but in physics, in biology, in geochemistry, in time. Tonight, as we drift through this slow unfolding of ideas, you can imagine the ocean as a mind made of motion, an emergent intelligence rising from the constant negotiation of its countless parts. And this is only the beginning. References, Part 1. Levin, S.A., 1998. Ecosystems and the Biosphere as Complex Adaptive Systems. Ecosystems. Piri Humbert, R., 2010. Principles of Planetary Climate. Cambridge University Press. Steele, J.H., 2009. Marine Ecosystems as Complex Systems. Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B. Volk, T. and Hoffert, M. 1985. Ocean Carbon Pumps, Analysis of Relative Strengths and Efficiencies. Geophysical Monograph Series. Longhurst, A. 1998. Ecological Geography of the Sea, Academic Press. Madden, J.S. et al. 2016. collective sensing and ecological memory in animal migration, science. As we return to the vast surface of the ocean in our imagination, drifting above the deep migrations and chemical whispers of hydrothermal vents, we begin to sense something subtle. The ocean is not merely reacting to the world around it, it is shaping the world. It is sculpting climate, steering winds, guiding the cycles of life. And it does all of this through slow, interconnected processes that resemble thought, not in content, but in function. Thought, after all, is not just about ideas floating through a mind. It is about processing information. It is about responding to stimuli. It is about organizing chaos into coherence. And if we take a slow step back, we begin to see that the ocean does all of these things, continuously, elegantly, and without pause. Tonight, we simply drift with these ideas, unhurried, letting each thought settle gently like silt descending through calm blue water. Consider, for a moment, the global conveyor belt, a sprawling system of deep currents that loops around the Earth like a circulatory system. Scientists often call this the thermohaline circulation because it is driven by heat and salt. Warm water from the equator flows northward, cooling as it goes. Eventually, it becomes dense enough to sink, traveling in slow, cold rivers through the deep ocean, sometimes taking centuries to complete a single loop. This system regulates Earth's temperature the way your bloodstream regulates heat in your body. It transports nutrients the way your circulatory system transports oxygen. It stabilizes climate, preventing wild extremes. If you see the planet as a living system, as many biologists and Earth system scientists do, then thermohaline circulation begins to resemble a kind of planetary metabolism, a way for the Earth to think through imbalance, a system that registers change, responds to it, and slowly adjusts. When ice melts rapidly in the Arctic, the change in freshwater softens the saltiness of the North Atlantic. This shifts the density of surface water, which in turn affects how deeply it sinks. And that, gently but powerfully, can alter the entire conveyor belt. The ocean registers the change almost the way your mind registers discomfort, not through a conscious signal, but through a shift in the balance of countless interacting processes. In this way, the ocean's thinking is slow, so slow it spans generations. But patience has always been its language. Time is the ocean's medium of thought, just as chemical gradients are its logic and currents its expression. Now let's drift inward, toward the shimmering upper layer of the ocean, the photic zone, where sunlight filters down like golden dust. This is the ocean's most expressive layer, where light sets everything into motion: growth, feeding, migration, fertility. Here, billions of tiny phytoplankton float and sway with the gentle movement of waves. They are the ocean's green thoughts, photosynthetic organisms that take in carbon dioxide, breathe out oxygen, and form the foundation of most marine food webs. They respond to changes in light, temperature, nutrients, and even chemical signals released by each other. Scientists have discovered that phytoplankton engage in chemical communication, releasing compounds that warn of predators or signal reproductive readiness. These messages ripple outward, influencing the behavior of entire populations. A microscopic dialogue, inaudible to us, yet essential to life. The ocean stores these exchanges the way a mind stores memory, not permanently, but functionally. Patterns repeat, behaviors return, conditions produce predictable responses, and over evolutionary time, this creates a kind of enduring intelligence, a memory written in genetic adaptation, ecological balance, and biogeochemical cycles. You could say the ocean remembers light. It remembers temperature. It remembers nutrients. Not in neurons, but in patterns. If one region becomes nutrient poor, upwelling currents rise to compensate. If temperatures climb too fast, downward mixing slows, altering surface conditions. If a species of plankton collapses, grazers shift or migrate, reshaping entire food webs. Every reaction becomes part of an ongoing flow, a kind of experiential tapestry woven not through conscious choice, but through persistent interaction. The more we drift through these systems, the clearer it becomes that thinking does not always need intention. Sometimes it needs only organization. And the ocean is one of the most organized chaos systems on Earth, dense with feedback loops, filled with signal pathways, humming with sensors in the form of living creatures. Think of the coral reefs, bright, bustling metropolises of marine life. Corals themselves are animals, but they depend on tiny algae, called zooxanthellae, that live within their tissues. These algae feed the coral with sugars produced from sunlight, while the coral provides carbon dioxide and shelter. A partnership, an interspecies collaboration, that requires constant communication. Corals bleach when stressed, expelling their algae. This looks like a passive collapse, but it is actually an active, regulated response. Too much heat leads to toxic byproducts of photosynthesis. So corals push the algae out, a drastic but protective act. If conditions improve, they allow the algae back in. If not, the reef declines. This may not be thought as we experience it, but it is certainly an adaptive decision encoded in biology, arising from millions of molecular signals, each responding to subtle environmental shifts. Reefs act like sensitive neurons in the ocean's body, alerting us to rising temperatures, acidification, and pollution long before deeper systems show change. They broadcast signals through bleaching events, species migrations, and chemical emissions. In this sense, coral reefs are among the ocean's greatest communicators. Let's move again, easing ourselves from coral forests into open water, where immense silver shapes glide effortlessly. The great oceanic fish, the migratory species whose journeys span thousands of miles. Follow in your mind a single bluefin tuna. It swims from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean and back, guided by magnetic fields, water temperatures, salinity gradients, and currents. Each environmental cue feeds into its navigational system, helping it adjust direction, depth, speed. This fish, like so many others, is a node in a planetary network of information. When temperatures rise, migration routes shift. When prey move deeper, predators follow. These behavior changes cascade across entire ecosystems. One species, adaptation becomes another species' signal. Movement becomes feedback. Patterns become instructions. And the ocean, through this vast choreography, responds. In many ways, the ocean thinks through its inhabitants, not as tools, but as collaborators in a grand, dynamic system of perception. Now let's drift downward again, slowly, like a leaf settling in deep water. We enter the twilight zone, a dim, blue-gray region where sunlight fades and shadows take on a soft, mysterious shape. Here, strange and delicate creatures live, gelatinous drifters, transparent fish, lantern-bright organisms that glow like small stars. These creatures are hypersensitive to subtle cues, changes in pressure, faint vibrations, tiny fluctuations in chemical composition. Their bodies act like sensory extensions of the ocean itself. They read its slightest shifts, respond with delicate precision, and become messengers of the deep. In this region, bioluminescence becomes a form of language. A flash of blue is a signal. A pulse of green is a threat. A fading glow is camouflage or invitation. The ocean invented communication long before brains evolved. Light became meaning. Movement became message. Chemistry became memory. Here in the twilight zone, one can almost feel the ocean's ancient, distributed intelligence, subtle, patient, and unending. As we continue to sink into the deeper waters of Part 2, the overarching thought gently settles. The ocean's intelligence is emergent. It arises from interactions between species, chemical gradients, global currents, evolutionary memory, biological communication, physical feedback loops. All of these processes are, in their own way, forms of sensing, reacting, adapting, and regulating. They fulfill the fundamental criteria of cognition, even if they exist without consciousness. The ocean does not think about the world. It thinks through the world, through its creatures, through its chemistry, through its motion, through its changing conditions, through time, through life itself. And still, so much remains to explore. In the next part, we'll drift deeper into the abyss, where darkness becomes absolute, and where the ocean's intelligence reveals itself in the most unexpected forms: pressure-driven ecosystems, deep-sea communication networks, and the ancient memory stored in sediments thousands of meters below. But for now, take a breath. Let the thoughts settle lightly, like tiny snowflakes of marine organic matter drifting through quiet blue space. The ocean is thinking, even now. It always has. We slip deeper into the ocean's quiet interior. We enter a place where the last threads of sunlight dissolve. The sea becomes a realm of darkness, vast, still, and immeasurably old. Here, in the unreachable depths, the ocean reveals another layer of its strange, distributed intelligence. The darkness isn't empty. It's full of slow processes that have shaped Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Take a moment to imagine this space. A darkness so complete it becomes almost soft. A pressure so immense it feels like time itself is pressing inward. And yet, in this silent world, life not only exists, it thrives with astonishing creativity. This is the abyssal zone, a place of near-freezing temperatures, crushing pressure, and perpetual night. Life here does not rely on sunlight for energy. Instead, it depends on the drifting snow of organic debris from the surface, tiny remains of plankton, fish scales, microscopic shells, falling slowly and continuously toward the bottom. This so-called marine snow might seem insignificant, but it is the deep ocean's quiet memory system. It carries with it information about everything happening above: algal blooms, migrations, seasons, storms, climate shifts. Layer by layer, year by year, this drifting material settles into sediments, storing a record that can last millions of years. If the surface waters are the ocean's present thoughts, then the deep sediments are its ancient memories, never spoken, but always preserved. In this sense, the ocean thinks across time. Not through cognition, but through accumulation. Through pattern. Through the slow recording of change. Every centimeter of sediment is a chapter in the Earth's biography. Let's drift closer to the seafloor now, where strange, fragile creatures move with deliberate slowness. Sea cucumbers inch across the ground like living fingerprints of the deep. Brittle stars raise their arms into the current, sensing vibrations. Ghostly whitefish glide in gentle arcs, conserving precious energy. Life here is patient. It listens more than it moves. It responds more than it acts. And in its patience, it forms part of the ocean's vast sensory network. Scientists have discovered that deep-sea organisms are extraordinarily sensitive to even the tiniest disturbances: sound waves from distant ships, small increases in temperature, subtle changes in currents. These signals propagate slowly, but they propagate nonetheless. The deep ocean receives them like whispers from a distant world. It is almost as if the ocean has sensory nerves, stretching thousands of miles. A disturbance in Antarctica, an iceberg calving, a surge of freshwater, can eventually shift nutrient flows in the South Pacific. A change in monsoon patterns above India can alter current strength near Africa. A collapse of fish populations in one region can ripple through entire ecosystems half a planet away. These connections form a planetary feedback system as complex and delicate as any neural network, while brains transmit signals electrically. The ocean does so through currents, chemistry, and life. Signals may take days, years, or centuries to travel, but they never vanish. The ocean receives all of them. As we explore this deep world, we come across one of Earth's most extraordinary phenomena: deep-sea vents, towering structures that rise like underwater chimneys from cracks in the ocean floor. Here, water superheated by the Earth's interior bursts out at temperatures exceeding 300 degrees C. Yet just feet away, the surrounding water is near freezing. This extreme contrast creates chemical gradients, natural sources of energy capable of supporting entire ecosystems. And around these vents, life organizes itself in complex webs. Tube worms, clams, crabs, and vast communities of microbes that use chemicals instead of sunlight to create energy. These microbial communities function like living processors. They detect concentrations of sulfur, methane, and metals with extraordinary precision. They adjust their metabolic strategies moment by moment. They exchange genetic information through horizontal gene transfer, adapting with stunning speed. In many ways, these microbial networks are the closest thing the ocean has to neurons. Each cell is sensitive. Each responds to change. And together, they form systems capable of regulating entire vent ecosystems. The ocean thinks through chemistry here. Through gradients. Through the invisible logic of molecules, taking the shortest energetic path. If intelligence can be defined as the ability to solve problems, then hydrothermal vent communities have been solving the problem of survival in one of Earth's harshest environments for more than 3 billion years. Long before brains evolved. Now, let's shift our focus even deeper, to a place beneath the seafloor itself. Here lies one of the most astonishing discoveries of modern science, the deep biosphere. Beneath the sediments, beneath the pressure, beneath what we once assumed was lifeless rock, there exists an entire world of microorganisms. Some are buried hundreds of meters below the seafloor. Some have lived in isolation for millions of years. Their metabolisms are unimaginably slow, so slow that a single cell division might take 1,000 years. And yet they persist. These microbes, living in deep rock and sediment, form a hidden network that rivals the biomass of all surface life. They process chemicals. They regulate methane. They stabilize deep carbon reservoirs. They influence nutrient cycles in ways we are only just beginning to understand. It is tempting to describe them as the ocean's subconscious. Life processes happening far below awareness, quiet but essential. Just as your subconscious regulates your breathing and digestion without your attention, the deep biosphere quietly regulates long-term ocean chemistry without ever touching sunlight. Here, intelligence exists in its most ancient form. The ability to endure, to adapt, to maintain equilibrium in utter darkness. Now, let your mind drift outward again, rising from the seafloor toward the open waters above. As we ascend, something becomes clear, a theme woven through every layer of the ocean's being. The ocean thinks through balance. It stabilizes. It absorbs. It redistributes. It remembers. But it also forgets. Storms mix surface layers. Currents erase boundaries. Creatures migrate, shifting patterns. Climate fluctuations overwrite old equilibria with new ones. The ocean's intelligence is dynamic, not fixed. It is fluid, not rigid. It is responsive, not controlling. And perhaps most fascinating of all is the realization that this intelligence is collective, distributed across billions of organisms, trillions of chemical reactions, and countless interactions that stretch across the planet. The ocean does not need a central mind. It is the mind. A mind made of water, movement, life, and time. In Part 4, we will drift into the ways humans have learned to decode these signals, how ancient sailors read the moods of the sea, how modern scientists interpret ocean data, and how the ocean's intelligence shapes culture, history, and climate. But for now, rest in this thought. You are floating within a world that has been thinking, in its own way, since long before humanity first opened its eyes. Take a slow breath. Settle into your seat. And let us drift even deeper into the quiet story of our solar system. Because now, we travel to the realms where sunlight fades, where shadows grow long, and where tiny grains of dust and frozen crystals float through space like wandering memories. Welcome to the world of comets, cosmic snowflakes, and ancient messengers. The origins of cosmic ice. Imagine a region so cold that water can freeze harder than steel. A region where molecules move so slowly that a single vibration might take hours. This is the birthplace of cometary ice. long before planets existed, before the sun even finished forming. Tiny particles gathered in the darkness of the solar nebula. A grain of silicate dust, no bigger than a grain of sand, drifting quietly through a cloud of gas. A molecule of water finds it, sticks to its surface, then another, and another. Soon dust becomes frost. Frost becomes ice. Ice becomes clumps. Clumps become mountain-sized bodies. These bodies would one day become comets. They are the oldest storytellers of the solar system. Older than Earth. Older than the oceans. Older even than the rocks beneath your feet. Why comets matter so much? Most objects in the cosmos change. Stars burn. Planets melt and crack. Moons freeze and thaw. But comets, they remain almost perfectly untouched. A comet is like a sealed time capsule, preserved for 4.5 billion years. Inside them we find primordial water, organic molecules, simple sugars and amino acid precursors, the earliest dust grains from ancient stars. When we study a comet, we are not studying just an object. We are looking into the childhood memories of our solar system. The comet's long sleep. Most comets spend their lives in a vast, distant realm called the Oort cloud, a sphere of icy bodies, stretching nearly halfway to the nearest star. Imagine a giant bubble around the solar system, filled with trillions of frozen wanderers. Out there, comets sleep, silent, cold, untouched, for millions, sometimes billions, of years. Then, something disturbs them. It might be a passing star, a shift in galactic tides, a slight gravitational nudge from Jupiter. And suddenly, the long sleep ends. The comet begins to fall inward, slowly at first, like a leaf drifting on a breeze. Then faster, and faster still, heading toward the sun. The awakening. As the comet drifts closer to the inner solar system, its frozen surface begins to warm. The ice starts to boil, not melt but sublimate, turning directly from solid to gas. A thin atmosphere forms around it. We call this the coma. Jets of gas erupt like tiny geysers, spraying dust and crystals into space. The comet begins to grow a tail, sometimes millions of kilometers long, always pointing away from the sun, pushed by the solar wind like a cosmic streamer. And for a brief moment, a few weeks or months, the comet becomes one of the most beautiful sights in the sky. A glowing wanderer, a cosmic visitor, a reminder of how ancient and fragile everything is. The journey of Comet 67P. To understand comets deeply, we must meet one closely. And so, in 2014, humanity did something incredible. We sent a spacecraft named Rosetta to chase a single comet, Comet 67P/Churyumov-Gerasimenko. After traveling 6.4 billion kilometers, Rosetta gently entered orbit around this tiny, 4-kilometer-wide world. From a distance, 67P looks like two rocks fused together. A strange, duck-shaped body, floating silently in black space. Its surface is dark, blacker than coal, covered with ancient dust. But when sunlight hits its frozen fractures, jets of gas burst out, twisting and curling like smoke in slow motion. Rosetta showed us cliffs taller than skyscrapers, pits that glow with escaping vapors, boulders resting quietly in low gravity, a surface sprinkled with organic compounds, and perhaps most astonishingly, Rosetta detected glycine, the simplest amino acid. Meaning, comets carry some ingredients of life. Not life itself, but the potential for life. A cosmic delivery system that may have seeded young Earth. with the molecules needed to eventually create us. Comets and the origin of Earth's water. There is a calm, beautiful idea in planetary science that some portion of Earth's oceans came from ancient comets. When Earth was young, it was battered by icy wanderers, each one delivering small amounts of water. One comet here, another there, over millions of years, until our world gained enough water to form oceans deeper than the height of Mount Everest. Not all scientists agree. Some believe asteroids delivered more water than comets. But both groups agree on something.